Hi, I'm Mathieu Côté. I'm the game director on Dead by Daylight, and I'm exceedingly happy to be here again with Shacknews.
The first question is, sometimes I derank if I kill survivors too fast. What's the reason for this?
Sometimes I D-rank if I kill survivors too fast. Because the points you get are not just linked to the kills. They're linked to the chases, the successful chases, the uses of your power. There's a lot of different things that go into it, and I'm not going to go into details because I know that they also change over time. Like we change the way the point system works, but overall, it's not so much about absolute efficiency as it is about having a fun, exciting game, and the most fun, exciting game you have, usually the more points you get. Stuff needs to happen in a game. So if you think that it's too easy and you're winning too quick, play with your food.
Yeah. So another question is, do you have any plans for monsters, licensed or otherwise? I love monsters.
Well, the Demogorgon was the first monster that we got into the game. It means now that monsters are possible in Dead by Daylight, and we might get others, licensed or otherwise.
As a huge fan of Sanimation, will you ever consider entering a Nia theme skin for an entity theme skin for Nia?
No. But I'm a huge fan of Salmonation too, and yeah, it's just super funny, and I'm glad that there are memes in our community, and they amuse me. But Nia, don't mess with Nia. She's my girl. That's all.
You guys recently did an experiment with the removal of Bloodlust. Did the results pan out the way you wanted?
I will not comment on that at this point. It was a really interesting experiment. The conversations that I read from people on forums and Reddit and wherever else discussing it were super interesting. Bloodlust was always understood to be sort of a makeup mechanism for something that wasn't exactly right. The goal is to find a more elegant solution. And as soon as we have something, we'll put it in front of players to see if they like it.
For the life of me, I cannot understand how I'm supposed to play Object of Obsession. Is it a team thing? Am I supposed to be on comms with all four of my teammates, revealing the killer at all time? And does this encourage the killer to tunnel me?
It does encourage the killer to pay attention to you. What he does with his obsession is a personal choice, but it is not a simple perk to use. And yes, it should be. It's not directly useful to you. It's useful to your group. How you go about making sure that information becomes used correctly is up to you. That's such a bullshit answer. Like, nobody's gonna be able to use that, but it's true. It's gonna make the killer pay attention to you. And it's gonna give you information that you can then use with your team, but you have to find a way to make them understand.
Do you have any plans to reworking Maurice and Keys? Maurice are generally unfun to play against, and Keys can be countered by Franklin's perk or killing the survivor. Maurice cannot.
Right.
Sorry, these are tough questions, I know.
Well, the Maurice were drastically changed, I think last year. No, probably before that. It's all blurry now. But the Maurice used to be you could kill people outright, which was intense. Now you actually have to have at least been on the hook once. So there's a few conditions in there, but Maurice will always stay, and killers should always feel like they are inevitable and really threatening. So there might be some changes in the Maurice, but the essence of it will always be something terrifying and final. As far as the keys, it's true that the keys do change the things up a little bit, but they're exceptional. And Franklin's is probably one of my favorite perks in the game. So yeah, just use Franklin.
Have you considered adding permanent upgrades to certain killers based on their usables? For example, Trappers is a lot harder to play without a bag. Have you ever considered opening his toolbox to have him standard with 2 or 3 traps?
Yes. These, we've done big reworks of the killers. The Freddy rework, the Doctor rework showed that we are at any point, all of these things are possible. Like we could very well change the Trapper in a very significant way. I think that the Trapper, it's true that he's so much more efficient with a bag, but even without it, he's a very, very efficient killer, and he's quite a lot of fun to play. So I don't think right now it's an emergency, but it's certainly up for conversation.
And then this was a popular one. They want to know if Clown is getting when Clown is getting a rework, if he's getting a rework, and what can you tease about his rework?
I don't think I can say anything about that specifically, but I've played the Clown actually on a stream we did a couple of weeks back, and I had so much fun. I don't know, like I'm a big fan of the Hag. I've kept playing the Hag as my main for a long time, but the Clown, he's so much fun. And he's not inefficient. Like people don't consider him, I think, a top tier killer, of course, but he's very efficient. If for mind games and for making sure you sort of corral people in the right direction, I like the Clown a bit. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about a rework of the Clown at this point.
Have you ever considered an add-on for the Clown where you can actually see the arc of the bottle being thrown for newbies who are terrible at throwing?
Yeah, it's the same thing with the hatchet. But I think like the hatchet, you're expected to do skill shots, and people do that and post videos of amazing across the map hatchet throws. The Clown, the fact that it's an area of effect, a big gas cloud, I don't think like it's one of those things that, let's say we did an add-on that allowed you to see the arc of the thing, then you'd get another question that says, oh, shouldn't that be part of his kit because it's so useful that playing without it is ridiculous. So I don't know, maybe that's part of the rework, probably not, if there is a rework.
We'll never know until it happens.
Yeah.
And then the biggest one, obviously, that I have to ask is, can you comment on current cross progression between consoles, Nintendo Switch, PC, Xbox, PS4, etc.?
I cannot comment on that. I can say though that it is. I mean, the getting the community to be together, no matter what platform you're playing on, and getting people to be able to play the game as much as they want on every single platform that they own is one of our very important goals that we have right now. Cross progression fits in that goal, and therefore we're looking at all the ways that we can get people to have access to the game wherever they are and play with everybody at any time. I can't give more details than that, but it's definitely something that we are trying to achieve. This overarching thing that you can grab any console, PC, platform that you have, start Dead by Daylight, get access to everything that you've done. It also, comes back to the fact that we want people to feel like the money that they invest in the game is well invested and it's respected. And therefore, if you buy something or if you level up a character on a platform, we want to make sure to give you access to that everywhere, so that we never want you to feel like you're forced to spend money. If you spend money, and we want you to spend some more, I will not lie, we would like people to spend some more money so we can continue making this game. But we want them to spend money because they want to, on stuff that they really want, and then they get it and they go, oh shit, that was awesome. I got a little distracted there.
How like it's also, I know it's difficult. I know with the multiple platforms, like Nintendo Switch is a good example where like certain
Yep.
killers weren't allowed on the platform. So like how do
Yep.
you handle that? It's like it's a very sensitive, complex situation.
Yeah, it's especially with licensors, it's difficult. Um, Mostly with the older licenses because the agreements didn't necessarily include these things because at the time we didn't know. Nowadays, when we make these kind of deals, we tend to negotiate for the future because we have a better idea of what's coming. But who knows? We may still have some surprises. But it's true. It's a challenge, and every single platform has their own challenge that they bring. And so, if we were talking earlier about the complexity of the perks and the combinations, creating this game and making it a coherent and cohesive experience across all platforms is becoming also an increasingly complex challenge because every single one of those platforms has their own particularities and their own requirements, and the communities play a certain way, and we want to make sure that everybody has the same experience across the board, but it's not going to be exactly the same everywhere, but it needs to be coherent and it needs to be sort of equal.
Do you see, like speaking to that, do you see players on Switch, PS4, Xbox, PC, do they play differently? Do you see more certain killers or survivors played on PS4 than PC or vice versa, that kind of stuff? Or is it all pretty much a jumbled mess?
It is a jumbled mess, but yes, there are trends. We have some super smart people whose sole purpose is to try to draw conclusions and interpret the data, because that's the thing. You can get a shit ton of data, but interpreting it correctly and drawing conclusions that are smart from those is very difficult, and it's a job in and of itself. And those conclusions that you draw, the reports that you do on that, correlating two different points of data is always a bit of a job of interpretation, and then there are theories, and then you try things to try. It's the scientific method. It's very clear how you do this, but it means that there are no certainties in there. You see that, there's this killer is more used on PS4, but is it because the players don't like the character? Is it because it doesn't look the same? Is it because of the controls? Is it because of, I don't know, PS4 is more popular in these regions of the world and this kind of character is not as popular in these regions of the world? There's so many reasons and conclusions you can draw from this data that it's always a little tricky, and it's got to be taken with a grain of salt. That being said, we do see some different behaviors in different communities, whether they're per platform, whether they're geographical location. There are different ways of playing the game.
Then obviously, I mean, next gen is out now. You're already running, I believe, on the Series X 4K at 60, but you're rolling out patches for that.
Yep.
As it goes to make it more stabilized. What excites you about having these next gen consoles for your team of behavior?
It's well, first of all, just having those consoles right now is exciting because it's tough to get a hold of one, but it really is like the new shiny toy right now, and we want to make sure that our game is gorgeous and shiny on this. It's sort of it is the next gen. Every single time this is the sort of rollout, it's the early adopters, it's the people who go, my God, this is the future of gaming right now that I'm playing, and we want Dead by Daylight to be present there, and we want them to enjoy the game as much as possible. So it's got to be, and it puts another layer of difficulty because we need to make sure that whatever new killer we create or whatever, we create a new outfit, it looks as good for people playing on the Nintendo Switch as it looks for people playing on the PS5. And there's quite a wide range in between those two consoles, but the experience needs to be equivalent, if you will.
There's a lot of games that there's not a lot of games that have crossplay across so many platforms. I think the only thing you don't crossplay with on your game is mobile.
Yes.
For certain reasons, but I think your game lends itself tremendously well to crossplay. I actually turned crossplay off on a lot of games because I feel specifically PC players, whether they have mouse and keyboard, higher draw distance, faster frame rates, can have an advantage, but I don't feel your game plays that way with you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's not a Call of Duty where like mouse and keyboard, draw distance and frame and refresh rate are everything. Like this game is much more forgiving in terms of twitchiness than
but it's more
games.
on the skill and even the knowledge of the game, like knowing how the buildings are done and which window is going to be there is much more useful to the end game result than being able to get pinpoint accuracy with the hatchet. I mean, it makes a difference, but not as much as the knowledge of the game and the using of the perks and knowing that, oh, this killer is using this perk, I'm going to do this to counter it. That's the real skill of Dead by Daylight. It's not being able to do a 360 headshot no scope.
Yeah, yours is the only game that I've ever played where I never blame, oh, well, obviously I lost because he was on PC and I was on. Like, you never say that with your game because it's more, like you said, it's more about the knowledge of how you play in the game rather than, oh, he has 60 frames in a mouse, so I lost. Like that kind of stuff, which I see in another game, Sea of Thieves, all the time. Where you can clearly tell this person's 360 jumping because he's getting a good refresh rate, great connection, and you're like chugging along trying to hit him. So, but yours is the only game, and I think that's a great accomplishment.
And it's that was always kind of the deal, because that we wanted it essentially. So if you fail at Dead by Daylight, the easiest thing to do, well, it's not easy, but the most obvious thing to do would be to blame yourself. Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I panicked and or maybe as a survivor, you can blame your teammates. That's also okay.
I know. I think the biggest misconception about that is that I think a lot of the pro players say, like, if you're chasing too long, stop chasing. Go to somebody else. If you're having difficulty killing a survivor because they're really good looping a pallet or going through windows, try something else. You know what I mean? Like, don't, it's okay to do that. And some people get that tunnel vision. I know you don't like to say that, we're talking about that. And
no, but that's absolutely correct. It's you get distracted. But it's so in character, and I kind of like that. Like as a killer, you're like, no, I'm gonna get you, and you sort of forget the whole, like everything else that should be more important, and you're like, no, you die now, and it's so visceral, and these little stories, these they keep popping up. These moments, and it's sort of inadvertent role play. Like you're sort of putting yourself in these characters, and that's beautiful. That's part of the magic of Dead by Daylight.
So I mean, Chapter 18 is out now. You're out of public beta, and you're out now on the main game. So you guys can purchase the chapter, support the studio. It's how they make new killers. It's how they make new perks. It's how they're redesigning all the maps. So you can, so it looks nice on the next gen consoles. So Matthew, what's next for your studio? I know people always ask that. I know you can't talk about it, but like what's can you give us any hints of what's coming next? So obviously you're doing more balance patching, you're introducing new maps, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So the graphic update, the Realm Beyond, we call that effort, is something that is going to be at the forefront for at least a couple more months, if not until the end of the year, next year. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but we have a lot more we want to do with this. We really want to bring Dead by Daylight to a visual quality that is amazing with today's standards. So that's going to be a continuing effort. Obviously, we just released a new chapter. It means that in 3 months, you can probably expect another one coming. In the meantime, the archives, every time we release a new archive tome, we have a few new tricks that we put in, a few new interesting ways to deal with objectives and rewards. So expect that. More stories, deeper lore for sure. And in the meantime, we're going to keep fixing the game and making it better and tweaking it. We know that it's an uphill battle that's never ending, and we'll continue at it. Keep sending feedback, hopefully constructive criticism. But I mean, I'm so happy to be able to keep working on that game, and the team has grown immensely since. I mean, the launch 4.5 years ago, we launched with about 30 people. We're now over 300. It's insane, but we want to continue to do that. And as far as behavior as a studio, we do have a few other ideas that we hope we can bring to people in the future. some interesting things. Let's say that we've done something with Dead by Daylight with the asymmetrical multiplayer that hadn't been done that way for sure in the past. Like others had tried to do something similar, but I think Dead by Daylight did it in a way that was not done before, and that hasn't been replicated since. And we hope to impress people with games that they didn't know could be.
Then the last question I have to ask is, and I know you can't answer it, but I just have to answer it anyway.
I like how you preface most of your question with that disclaimer.
Oh, because I get it. You know what I mean? You can't give somebody a year's worth of content because then you have nothing to hype up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So now that the a certain game is no longer live, does that mean a certain killer might find their way into the realm of Dead by Daylight?
So I will answer this as diplomatically as I can. The licensing world is an extremely complex world, filled with weird ramifications and lots of legalese that I do not understand. But there are many ways to go about a lot of these things, and each and every one of them is an adventure in and of itself. The fact that a game has or does not have a character has usually not that much impact. In the case of Dead by Daylight, for the most part, having Freddy in the game does not prevent other games to put Freddy in their games. But let's say that behavior is Dead by Daylight has now become the Hall of Fame of horror. And these legends that we're talking about one or two that are legendary and that have not yet set foot in the world of Dead by Daylight. I'll just say that they have a standing invitation, and as soon as they're ready, they'll have their room in the back already, and we're ready to welcome them.